Hi, Caitlin. This photo is just too blurry. It's not portfolio quality. I need you to rephoto this. Take a picture of your drawing out of doors in daylight and repost it. I can see in the foreground there's a block, maybe a child's building block. That's a nice sort of subject to include, and it seems as though it's drawn pretty well. With the toy on the left, it seems like it's something like a stack of donut shapes. The bottom edge is going to be more curved. Together, these donut forms create a kind of cone, and a cone is going to be a lot like a cylinder. You'll see that I made a post with a picture file concerning drawing cylindrical forms, and I'd like you to really study that. Well, hi, George. I see you've noted some dimensions here. Now, as much as we do mm, make a sort of basic measurement, there's not really a need to mark it on the page. I don't need to see that from you. What I do want you to do is judge proportions there in your still life in front of you and recreate the same proportion on your page. Now, I want you to take a look at my announcement about citing, and there's a link there that should be of assistance. I've also provided a short video, but I'd like you also to reread the online lectures and the sections in your textbook to be sure you've got this down, because it's a pretty important concept. It's central to drawing from observation. Hi, George. An added note, please, for future, be sure to start all file names with your last name. Also, ensure that all of your works are posted as JPEGs. Joanna, you've really been working away here. Applause for your diligence. Um, I'm taking a look at the drawing on the left, and there are a couple of little pointers I'd like to make. First, the bottle in center uh, probably needs some attention paid to the bottom edge. That ought to be curvy. It should look more curvy than, say, the top edge of the label. Um, with such a drawing, I think I'd allow more space above the subjects for future. I was also wondering whether the back edge of the box the candles sit on needs to be as defined or as dark as it is. With your signature, I would let that be discreet. I'd put that in the bottom right corner and let it be light. Now, looking at the second drawing, mm, so much of interest here. I especially like the foot on the little cup there in the foreground. With Snoopy, I can't quite understand how he could be balanced on the box as he is, and I would advise you for future to draw the box first and then add anything that sits on top of it. Well, hi, Anthony. Between these two drawings, it's the one on the right that attracts my attention because we're looking for a drawing with values. Here you're showing black, white, and various grays. One little thing you can do to improve this is to use a lamp. There ought to be a lamp on one side or the other so that one side of each object is illuminated and the other side is in shadow. And I want you to practice um, creating light and shadow falling over forms with the help of directional lighting. Now, I'm looking at the way that the table is slanting. This seems to be an issue that crops up when people are not sitting square with their subject or their drawing page. In other words, arrange your setup so that you can view your subjects without having to turn dramatically. Also, make sure your paper is square with the edge of your desk and that you're sitting with good posture and also square with the edge of your desk. Hi, Lori. I know I've looked at a couple of these before in the drafts reviews, and I appreciate the fact that you're posting drafts. I want you to pay close attention to that item that I um, added to, I think it was assignment 3 discussion about drawing cylinders. One thing that I see you doing repeatedly is drawing the bottom edges of cylinders as straight lines, and they ought to be curved. In fact, they ought to be more curved than the top edges of the cylindrical forms, the candles, for instance. Now, further, I'm going to press you to let go of outlining. And I think a key to doing that is starting your drawing with a gesture drawing that's searching more for the energy and the form of your subject rather than its edge. Heidi, a nice job here, both with applying value in some of the areas and also with selecting subjects to draw. The area that I think is most successful in terms of shading is the bottom left area of the candle in the left side drawing. I want you to begin this sort of drawing with a very light gesture sketch rather than a line drawing. Also, I want you to work on judging angles using the clock face method. Please see announcements and my announcement about citing there with a link to a description of how that's done. Hi Deborah, I appreciate the variety of subjects that you've selected to draw. This adds interest with your drawings. I think in terms of modeling, of adding light and shadow, the drawing on the left is working best. With both of these, it appears that your light is behind your subjects, which is a difficult way to work. Number one, the light might be in your eye. And number two, the objects are backlit, so it's hard to see light and shadow moving across their forms. Let's take a look at the roll of, I think it's toilet tissue there in the right drawing. So we see light on its top surface, but on its side, the value is uniform. It would be better to put your light to the right or the left so that we saw one side of this roll as illuminated and the other side as shaded. I want you to pay special attention to things like the shape of the ellipse on the top of such a roll. It looks as though there are a couple of vases there at the left. Should we see the rear edge of the mouths of the vases? Samantha, here I like the array of subjects that you've selected. I want to take a look at the baseball. Nice job of shading that. I'd like to see more of that sort of treatment in future drawings. Let's look at the bottles on the right sides of each drawing. It seems as though these drawings aren't exactly symmetrical or they're leaning toward the right. In fact, the compositions tend to lean toward the right. To remedy that, I'm going to refer you to what I was telling Anthony, right? Make sure to have your drawing page square with the edge of your table and square your chair with the edge of your table too. Also, I want you to take a look at Dorena's book, page 29, and there's a description there of using a central axis, sort of like a north-south pole on a globe, through your bottle. And doing this is going to help you to judge whether or not you've drawn it symmetrically. Further, I want you to take a look at the bottom edges of those two bottles because they ought to be curved like the bottom of a cereal bowl. And I'll just add that they aren't supposed to look like cereal bowls, but that's the direction of the curve that you want there. Why, Jennifer, I'm very interested in what you're doing with these drawings. I'm especially pleased with the outcome that you've achieved with the drawings pictured here on the right. I would encourage you to let the cast shadow be more subtle. I want you to squint when regarding that shadow. I'm pretty sure that you're going to see the outer edges of it as lighter and less in focus, more fuzzy. The way that you've modeled the large bottle in the lower drawing is especially nice. And I also appreciate the interesting event of the overturned coffee cup. The sphere in the middle is drawn nicely too. I'm wondering whether that sphere also casts a shadow on the tabletop. I'm thinking too of the shape of the tabletop. Could it be more round, that edge that we see in the rear? And if you are showing us an edge, could it be that the value is different on one side or the other side of the edge? Jennifer, I'm attracted to this drawing at the top right here. I love the silvery quality and feel the values work well. This may be an earlier version of the drawing at bottom. There in the drawing at bottom, the perfume bottle is understood to a greater degree and the shadow works even better. I'm wondering about the mat that sits beneath these objects. It seems something like a placemat on a kitchen table. I don't feel as though the perspective's just right there, and I want you to work with the clock face method. For more on that, take a look at my announcement on citing and follow one of the links there where you see judging angles used in unison with looking at a clock face.